Chapter 13. Deirdre sat proudly on her horse, leading the group of liberated girls through the familiar streets of Ur, and feeling a sense of pride at her homecoming. It felt good to be back in familiar terrain, back in her father's stronghold, and it felt good most of all to be able to help these girls, to spare them the anguish that she had met herself. Yet Deirdre felt a wave of mixed emotions as she rode these packed familiar streets, each corner filled with a childhood memory, but also with a sense of sadness. It was here, after all, that the Pandesians had taken her away. It was here that her father and his men had done nothing to stop it, had allowed her to be given away, like chattel in some cattle trade. All because some lord in some far-off empire had declared that Escalon women were the property of men. It was here, in her own city, that she had been betrayed, where her father, whom she had idolized most of all, had let her down. Deirdre rode on, determined, anticipating the confrontation to come with her father, looking forward to it and dreading it at the same time. A part of her loved her home city with its glistening canals, its cobblestones, steeples, domes, and spires, its ancient temples, its air filled with the sound of foreign traders and the sight of foreign banners. Yet a part of her wanted to run from it all, to start fresh somewhere else. She passed through the arch of the ancient temple, and a part of her wanted to lead these girls elsewhere, anywhere else in Escalon. Deirdre knew she couldn't run from her fears. She had to confront her past, confront those who had betrayed her, teach them what it meant to sell a life. These men, her father most of all, had to be held accountable for their actions. All through her life, Deirdre had always been one to avoid confrontation. Yet now she knew that to run away from it would be cowardly. If she did not face them, make them own what they did, it would endanger other daughters, and other girls would suffer the same fate she had. As Deirdre turned into the crowded marketplace, people stopped and stared, looking up in wonder at the caravan of girls riding so proudly down the center of the streets. Ur was a city that had seen it all, given its exotic visitors from all corners of the world, yet this sight stunned people. After all, they were a group of young, beautiful girls, exhausted from their long journey, perhaps, but riding proudly through the streets like a band of warriors. Deirdre felt intensely protective of each one of them and was determined to find each a home, or give them a spot fighting beside her, whatever they chose. As Deirdre rode proudly down the center of the street, she knew the dangers of being so conspicuous. She knew the Pandesian presence was everywhere, and she knew that word would spread soon of her arrival if it hadn't already. They would come looking for her to her father's fort, but she refused to hide in her hometown. She reached down and tightened her grip on the hilt of her sword. If they came for her, she was ready. As she rode, Deirdre thought of her friend Kira, alone, on her way to the Tower of Ur, and she wondered if she had made it. She vowed to herself that, as soon as she got these girls situated, as soon as she had the weapons and support she needed, she would find her somehow, join forces with her. She felt that Kira was like a sister to her, the sister she never had, the two of them having suffered so much together at the hands of the Pandesians. Deirdre turned a corner and felt a rush of excitement as she saw her father's stronghold, the ancient stone fort, low, crowned with parapets, on top of which stood many of her father's men. They were unarmed, of course, given the Pandesian presence in the city and the law against Escalon men bearing weapons. Yet they were still allowed at least to inhabit the fort, her father having at least some semblance of the strength he once had here as a warlord. It was just a facade, though, she knew. With the Pandesians occupying them, they were hardly the free and proud warriors they had once been. And that was about to change, if she had any say in it. Deirdre surveyed the fort's familiar walls, its thick, ancient oak doors, studded with iron, saw her father's men standing guard outside, dressed in the chainmail of Escalon warriors, and she felt at home. As she neared with her girls, they all stopped and looked over at her in shock. She stared back, cold and hard, realizing she was no longer the young, innocent girl who had left here. She was a woman now, a woman who had seen too much, who had been to hell and back. She was no longer willing to bow to the rights of men. "Deirdre," a soldier called out in surprise, rushing forward. "Why have you returned? Did your father not marry you off?" "Marry," she spat back with disgust, anger rising in her voice. "A convenient word." The soldier studied the girls with her, clearly amazed. "And who are these girls?" he asked. Deirdre dismounted, gestured to the girls, and they dismounted too, as more of her father's men gathered around in amazement. "These are the liberated women of Escalon," Deirdre replied. "They are under my protection." "Protection?" the guard asked with a smirk. Deirdre's face darkened. "I shall see my father at once. Open these doors," she commanded. The men looked at each other in wonder. More she could see, due to the newfound authority in her voice than anything else. "Is he expecting you?" a soldier asked. Deirdre glared back with steely eyes. "I'm not asking you to open the doors," she replied. "I'm telling you." The men hesitated, looking to each other. Then finally one nodded, and the others stepped back and opened the doors wide. They creaked as they slowly gave way. "Let your father deal with you then," one of the guards said sternly, dismissing her as she walked past. Deirdre paid him no mind. She walked proudly, leading the girls through the doors. The ancient, musty smell of the place hit her as she walked in. That smell she recalled so well. The smell of a true fort. It was dim in here, as she remembered, lit only by sporadic tapered windows that let in narrow shafts of light. They walked through the stone corridors, empty, and as she looked up and saw the marks on the wall, the empty spots where her father's trophies used to hang, his finest weapons, shields, suits of armor, banners from clans he had defeated in battle. Yet these too were gone now, vestiges of what once was. Another insult from Pandesia. Deirdre continued down a long corridor until she spotted the familiar set of arched doors that led to the great hall. Muffled sounds arose from the other side, and a soldier stood guard before it. But when he saw the look of determination on her face, he did not hesitate. He stepped aside and opened the doors for her. As he did, a wave of sound and noise hit her like a wall. Kira steeled herself as she entered, the girls behind her. Dozens of her father's men lounged about the hall, furnished only with a long, square wooden table, open in the center, men passing in and out. A large fire burned on either side, dogs resting before it, fighting over scraps. Men were drinking, eating, clearly discussing matters of war. It was a group of warriors without a war, without a cause, idle, weaponless, stripped to the shell of what they once were. At their head sat her father, seated before the huge square table which served as a place to feast, to meet, or alternately as a council table for matters of importance, matters of war, matters they had not discussed in too many years. As Deirdre and her girls entered, the men soon noticed, and a silence fell over the room. She had never thought to see such an amazed look on their faces, as one at a time they turned and watched her enter. They looked as if they were staring at a ghost. Deirdre marched right up to the center of the table, to her father. He stopped talking to the warrior beside him and looked over at her, his jaw dropping in astonishment. He stood, rising to his full height. "Deirdre," he said weakly, shock in his voice. "What are you doing here?" She noticed his face flush with concern, and she was reassured to see that at least he seemed to care. She had been forged by suffering, was no longer the same person, and her father clearly realized even if these men with him could not. His face filled with concern and guilt as he hurried from his seat and stepped forward to embrace her. Yet as he reached for her, she held out a palm and stopped him. He looked at her questioningly, his face filled with pain. "You do not deserve a daughter's embrace," she said coldly, her voice deep, filled with an authority which surprised even her. "Not a daughter you gave away." His face darkened with guilt, yet it also became set, as it sometimes did, with stubbornness. "I had no choice," he countered, defensive. "I was obliged by law." "Whose law?" she asked. He furrowed his brow, clearly not appreciating being questioned. He was not used to her standing up to him like this. "The law trusts upon all of us, all of Escalon," he replied. "The law you allowed to be thrust upon you," she countered, unwilling to back down. His face flushed red with anger and shame. "Deirdre, my daughter," he said, his voice broken. "Why have you returned? How did you leave? How did you cross Escalon alone? What has happened to you? I don't know the voice of this woman who is speaking to me." She stared back, feeling a mix of sorrow and defiance, recalling how much she had once loved this man and how badly he had betrayed her. "That is right, Father. You don't know me anymore. I am not the same girl who left you. Not since you gave me away like a piece of property. Not after what I have suffered. I am a woman now. Tell me, Father, would you have given away one of your sons as easily as I? Or would you have fought to the death if they had come to take them?" He stared at her, and she stared back. As she did, she felt for the first time, rooted in place, no longer feeling a need to be quiet, to back down as she always had. For the first time, she realized she had equal strength, equal fierceness to her father. She no longer needed to recoil from his steely brown eyes, eyes which she herself had. And then, slowly, the most amazing thing happened. For the first time since she had known him, her father's look of defiance morphed to one of guilt, of sorrow, as his eyes welled with tears. "I am sorry," he said, his voice broken. "For whatever has happened to you, I never meant for anything bad to come of it." She felt like crying, but she would not give in. Instead, she turned and faced all the other warriors in the room as she spoke. "Do you know the daily beatings I suffered? How they tortured me? How they locked me in a cell? How they passed me from one lord to the next? I was left for dead, and how I wish I had died. If it had not been for a dear friend, I would be dead right now. She saved me. A girl, a woman, who had more strength and courage than all of you men. No one else came for me, not one of you. Every day I woke and I was sure you would come. I was sure that there was not one of you who wouldn't risk his life to save a girl from torture." She sighed. "And yet, none of you came. You, brave warriors, who pretend to be the bearers of chivalry." She looked at all of the faces, and one at a time. She could see them all look away or look down, all shamed, all with nothing they could say. Her father's face fell, pained as he stepped forward. "Who hurt you?" he demanded. "I did not give you over to be tortured. I gave you to be nobly wed to a Pandesian lord." Deirdre threw a glance of hatred back at him. "Nobly wed," she seethed. "Is that what you call it? A fancy term to justify your spinelessness?" His face reddened with shame, he unable to respond. and as she surveyed all the other men in the room, they hung their heads low, none able to say a word. "Pandesia has done what they have done not just to me," she called out, her voice stronger, "but to all of you. You should know this. You should know that when you hand off your daughters, you hand them off not to be wed, but to be beaten, tortured. They torture them even now, as we speak, in all corners of Escalon, in the name of their great law. And you all sit here and allow it to happen. Tell me, when did you all stop becoming men? When did you stop standing up for what was right?" She looked at all their faces and could see them begin to transform with indignation. "You all, great warriors, men whom I respected more than any in the world, have become weak, cowardly men. Tell me, when did you forget your oaths? Was it the day you laid down your weapons? How long do you think it will be until Pandesia comes, not just for your women, but for you too? Is that when it will mean something to you? When the sword is at your throat?" She stared them all down, and not one of these men was able to say a word in response. The room hung thick with a heavy silence, as she could see their minds turning. "You all disgust me," she said, indignation coursing through her veins. "It is not Pandesia I blame, but you. You who allowed this to happen. You don't deserve the right to be called warriors, not even men." She stood there, waiting for her father's response. But for the first time in his life, he stood there speechless. Finally, when he spoke, they were the words of a broken man, a man who looked much aged since she had strode into the room, a man who looked filled with regret. "You are right," he said, his voice subdued, broken. She was surprised. Never in her life had he admitted he was wrong. "We don't deserve to be called warriors, and I didn't realize that until this day." He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, and this time she allowed it. "Forgive me," he said, his eyes welling with tears. "I never knew how wrong I was. It is the greatest shame of my life, and I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you allow me to." Deirdre felt her own eyes well at his words, all of her pent-up emotion rising to the surface, remembering how much she had once loved him, trusted him. But she fought it back, unwilling to show these men any emotion, still unsure if she would be able to truly forgive. Her father turned to all his men. "On this day," he boomed, "my daughter has taught us all a lesson we have forgotten. She has reminded us what it means to be a warrior, of the warriors we once were, and of what we have become. She is the bravest and best of us all." The men grunted in affirmative response, banging the table with their cups. Her father stood to his full height, welling with pride once again, a gleam returning to his eyes that she had not seen in years. "On this day," he called out, "we shall take up arms once again, even at the risk of our lives, as our women have so bravely done." The men cheered, their faces brightening. "We shall learn what it means to become warriors once again. The enemy lies before us. We may die confronting him, but we shall die once again as men." The men cheered loudly, rising to their feet. "Bring me that scroll," he gestured to a squire. The boy rushed across the room and removed from the wall a scroll with Pandesian writing, several feet long. Her father held it out for all to see. "The Pandesians declare that their laws must be hung in our meeting halls. Removal is upon pain of death," he reminded. He held the scroll out before them, and then slowly tore it in half, the sound filling the air. The men let out a great cheer, and Deirdre felt her heart warming as her father threw the scraps to the floor. "We shall fight Pandesia," he said, turning to Deirdre, "and you shall point the way." Her father reached for her, and this time she embraced him back as the men cheered. Life, she felt, maybe, just maybe, could begin again.